Hi everyone, and welcome along to the final episode for Season 2 of the Your Mind in Sport podcast. Wow, what a magnificent journey of learning and self-discovery it's been for us all so far. In the beginning, I never thought anybody would want to listen to Gary Lavery. Who's he? And what sport did he play for professionally? But I kept showing up week in, week out. And then I started getting some private messages from listeners telling me how they were applying what they were learning and sharing some amazing transformational stories with me of not just in sport, but in business and life as well. So there you have it. The human being is a learning machine. Let's move on with the show, shall we? If you have that mindset where you believe in yourself and you believe in your capabilities, even when you're backed into a corner, you will always come out fighting. And just because you cannot physically see your mind doesn't mean that you should not train it. In this episode, I'm going to shine a positive light on failure and uncover why failure in sport is still perceived as a dark, dirty word that only losers will know about. Maybe you still perceive failure like that as well. Furthermore, you will uncover some new ways of reframing how you think about failure with 5 key secrets that will completely shift your mindset from failure into learning. The former world tennis champion was being interviewed on a radio program. Had he always been a champion? The interviewer asked. No, he hadn't, he said. Although, when he had been young, he had been picked as a potential future prospect. But other boys had been better than him, more naturally gifted. And he often had to play the best of the girls, who were a better match for him than the more naturally talented boys. So where are they now, these boys? Said the interviewer. What happened to all of them? Well, said the former champion, they just didn't make it. For all their talent, they didn't have what it takes. So what does it take? Asked the interviewer. You've got to want it enough. Is that the secret? There's another. It takes discipline. No matter how much talent you have, you've got to have the discipline to nurture and develop it. You've got to prioritize and give up a lot of things that can seem very attractive at the time. So is that the secret? The former world champion tennis player looked at the interviewer and said, and you can find out exactly what he said later on in this episode. So why should you listen to this episode of Your Mind in Sport? Well, do you sometimes find yourself drowning in the pool of failure and are now sick of feeling this way? Do you often find yourself blaming others or making excuses because you didn't achieve what you wanted? Do you think failure in sport could be known as a gift of learning something new? And finally, would you like to know how you can stop worrying about failure and start to embrace failure through a positive lens? Now, if you've said yes to one or more of those 4 questions, then the earth-shaking news is you're listening to the correct podcast right now. One supercharged message that I want to plug in right from the start is that from a human perspective, everyone wants to win. We all want to succeed at what we do, and nobody wants to fail. So why is there a problem then? Well, you as a sports performer or as a sports coach will be involved with playing or competing in competitive sport, which involves winning and losing. Furthermore, winning and losing, or success and failure, whichever way you want to describe it as, are lessons in life. But why is failure still perceived as losing or a worst case scenario? You are what you repeatedly do. Failure then is not an act, but a habit, and it can be a very bad habit over time. Now, the good news here is that you can form new habits, but it takes effort and installing the right strategies at the unconscious level, because willpower alone is not enough in this case. Obviously, these habits come from somewhere, and one thing I want you to consider at this stage is, why has it been like this for so long? And the one word that keeps jumping out higher than others is the word culture, or the environment of which those people were actually surrounded within when they were growing up, or even now playing sport for teams and clubs. And one more really important point at this stage is that you could say that modern day parenting is, we want to make sure that our children are great at everything. We don't want our children to fail. And some people might say, well, that's right or that's wrong. Like I said before, look, nobody wants to fail. However, through my eyes, failure is a lesson in life. And dealing with this is a very important skill to learn at any age, really. In my opinion, I believe failure is a good thing from time to time. And as long as you can learn something from that experience, you will not become fearful of failure. The challenge is, if you can embrace failure as a learning opportunity to learn and grow mentally stronger, even when you fail, you can still elevate your internal success. So let's move on, shall we? What is failure? So from your perspective, what I want you to do is think of one word which best describes the word failure. And just maybe you might have thought of the words like losing, defeat, horrible, awkward as being negative words, or learning, attitude, acceptance, lesson as positive words. If you prefer a definition of the word failure from the dictionary, it states the fact of someone or something not succeeding. Come to think of this, in his book, The Winning Mind by Sebastian Coe said, failing is part of the process of winning and often provides the greatest lessons in sport and life. So even if you fail at something, take this experience that you have learned how not to do something, but you did attempt to do something rather than nothing, as being a positive. If you don't take responsibility for your failure, this can and will have a huge side effect both now and in the future, such as low self-confidence, limiting beliefs, and a whole fireball of fear regarding failure. One more really important point here is that studies tell us that we have 6,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them were the same as yesterday. And like I said earlier, we are all creatures of habit, whether we acknowledge this or not. Furthermore, we are and we become those things which we repeatedly do. Therefore, failure can become not just an event, but a habit. One of the greatest ever American football coaches, Vince Lombardi, who was very high performance, he said, winning is not a one-time thing. It's an all-time thing. You don't win once in a while. You don't do things right once in a while. You do things right all the time. Winning is a habit. Unfortunately, so is losing. So one point that I really want to highlight here is nobody likes to lose at something and nobody likes to fail at something. Now, the whole point of me saying these next few words is to get you to think, how do you respond to negative feedback? Because no doubt about it, the majority of us humans don't like receiving any kind of negative feedback. Am I right? Hearing things that you don't want to hear can leave a lump in your throat because you are not used to this kind of conversation. And what's more important about failure is, do you have the mental toughness to keep your mind in the present moment and not let your ego jump 2 steps ahead when people who you trust are giving you developmental feedback? So let me ask you another question. What stops you from doing things differently or even better in the future? It's probably that fear of failure. Here's the truth. You are going to fail. I'm going to say that again. You are going to fail because success is very rarely a straight line. Everybody will fail from time to time. This is a fact of life. But how can you use this failure as a positive? So with everything that we've done so far, I just want to say this. You cannot get away from failure, but you can learn how to deal with it. So here are my 5 tips of how you can deal with failure in the future. Tip 1. There's no failure, only feedback. Build this message into your performance culture because every one of your performers will see the world in a different way to you. They will also think of failure and deal with failure in a different way to you as well. This could be a result of a previous culture or a previous leader. But allowing your players to express themselves and play with a sense of freedom can turn around a fearful performer. You cannot remove failure from sport. That's absolutely impossible because it will always exist, always. However, you can chat collectively or individually with your performers. What does failure mean to them? What does that individual need? How can you support them with failure? What proven psychological strategies can you share with them that will get your performers up for the next challenge ahead? Tip 2. Change it before it changes you. When you have failed at something, it's happened, it's gone, it's history. You need to stay in the here and now. The key question is, what did I learn that I can control for the future? Tip 3. Move away from normality. This might sound a little crazy at first. As a coach, set people up to fail during training or other situations. And just notice their behaviour and mental toughness. Do they adapt to the situation or do they crumble? Do you see any natural leaders emerge in the group because of this unusual situation? As a coach, it could be one of the best things that you do because it goes completely against the norm. But you will have give your players a lesson in life because some of them think of a nice smooth path towards success. And as coaches, as leaders, parents, managers, we tend to bubble wrap people up from negative situations and people. And sometimes our players expect things to be handed to them on a silver platter without showing accountability, patience, or mental resilience. Tip 4. Just one small change. Begin with the end in mind. Most people will try to change too much too soon quickly. Small wins builds the emotional victory towards your desired outcome because they are easy to remember and complete. Furthermore, persistence, determination, staying the course, this is what it finally takes to win. It is also this that has me convinced that real winners win even when they lose. So just to give you an example of what I mean by small wins is, don't start with 100 push-ups, start with one a day. Think about the process, leading up to the outcome, the end, the destination, the desire of what you want to achieve in the future. Tip 5. Embrace change and prove people wrong. When you embrace failure, you will learn to see failure as the fuel that drives you towards success, and the one vehicle that moves you towards your destination quickly is learning. One coaching conversation that I like to have with sports performers very early doors is fail often, learn quickly. And I ask them to give me their thoughts around what does that mean to them? And if they start to believe that way, how different would their performances be in the future? When the going gets tough, you will experience failure upon failure upon failure until you get it right. And don't be surprised at what other people might say about your efforts. Some people will say, keep going. And some people will say, I told you so. And it's those I told you so people that can add fuel and fire to your motivation going forward. The thing is, when everyone believes you are going to fail, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by proving to yourself that you can do it. Whenever necessary and with the benefit of experience, continue to use other people's disbelief as a highly motivating tool when you are faced with those real tough challenges right in front of your eyes. So what if you did carry that belief around within your headspace of there's no failure, only feedback? Would you proactively start seeking feedback and listening to what other people have to say? But most of all, would this make you mentally and emotionally stronger going forward? And what if you started being accountable for your results by taking more accountability for your actions? How would you make this game-changing shift boost your self-belief now and in the future? And what if you look through the lens of a high performer and started to embrace failure as a learning experience? How much more could you really achieve in the future? So just before you tune out of this episode of Your Mind in Sport, I want to leave you with a final quote which really sums up everything that we've spoke about throughout this podcast. And it's this: the way a performer wins shows much of their character. The way they lose shows all of it. And as the world tennis champion sat there looking at the interviewer, he said, there's another, and it's harder and more demanding than the first two put together. You need humility, no matter how good you are. You need humility to listen to your coaches, to take advice, to test new possibilities, and to admit you don't know everything. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. These three things are the secrets to my success. So all good things must come to an end, and this one just has. Thank you very much for lending me your ears and listening into another episode of Your Mind in Sport. And one small favour just before you tune out right now is to help me grow the podcast and reach a wider audience. I would be most grateful if you could head over to iTunes, subscribe, give us a rating and share a comment. Or if you are a YouTube person, please can you head over there right now, subscribe, like and leave a comment of how you found this podcast. Thank you very much for listening in. That is it. The curtain is just about down on the final episode of Your Mind in Sport for Season 2. See you all again really soon. Stay safe. Bye for now.